We have so much to do to see if we can correct the injustices in another country. We're not even paying attention to the injustices that we have happening here. And when we take a look at what's going on here on the streets of the United States of America, how about take a look at Chicago and crime in Chicago? From September 4th, 2009 to October 4th, 2009, there were 32,759 crimes committed. The primary type, 6,000 plus were theft, 5,000 plus battery, 3,000 plus criminal damage, 3,000 plus narcotics, 2,000 plus burglary, 1,800 plus assaults, and the other 1,800 is something else. 42 homicides. So we want to talk about opportunity. There's a lot of people who would say that part of the reason for the carnage on the streets of Chicago and in the Midwest is because of no opportunity or opportunity, unperceived opportunity. How do we give them a little bit? How do people get a little hope? There's a program. It's called Clearpath that has been being employed in Chicago. It's called Chicago Alternative Police Strategy. And its commander is Commander Jonathan Lewin, and he's here today to tell us how we're going to try to solve the problems that we see on the streets, because every single day that goes by, another assault, another beating, and another murder. Please, big round of applause for Jonathan Lewin. Thanks so much, Jonathan, for being part of the show today.
Thanks, Montel, for having me.
You know, I got to tell you something. This the last caller that we had here who was talking about Afghanistan. There's something a little analogous to the war zones in Iraq and Afghanistan and what, we can call the war zone there in Chicago. And what I mean that's analogous to this is the fact that we ought to think in terms of how we, were able to stem some of the violence in Iraq. You know what we did in Iraq? We went out and paid warlords. We paid them. Part of the surge was cash, money in bundles given to warlords under rocks and huts. Okay? And those guys then use that cash to distribute among their followers, and they said, okay, this week we won't pay. Bring me another load of cash next week and we'll pay it. Now, it's ignorant to say cash would solve the problem in Chicago, but opportunity backed by cash would. If we took even a tenth of what we spent in Iraq to force democracy down somebody else's throats, that tenth of that money going to the schools, going to after-school programs, going to other initiatives in Chicago could stem the same flow of violence there. What do you think?
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you kind of mentioned some of the, other issues besides just the police solving all the problems, because that's obviously not going to happen. It's got to be a holistic approach.
Please welcome the executive director of the Forest Park Community Center in Joliet, Illinois, and his name is Mr. Tony Ray. Welcome him.
Well, hello, Montel.
How are you, Tony? Thank you. And we have on the line with us Commander Jonathan Lewin. And let me ask this really silly question. I asked the commander this one. But, if you take a look at what we did in the surge in Iraq, we went in not only with troops, but it's a little known fact that a lot of Americans need to pay attention because it's about ready to happen in Afghanistan. We also rolled in with checks, not checks, cash. We were going around to warlords out in the middle of nowhere, moving aside sand to get to the doorway and handing over bundles of money, $5,000 here, $10,000 here, $3,000 here, $10,000 here. Now, I'm not saying that in Chicago we need to be handing children money, but why don't we take some of those billions of dollars that we're spending to shove democracy down somebody else's throat and put even half of that. Let's put, $500 million into the, Chicago and surrounding public school system to have after school programs where children would feel protected and not feel like that they could be killed, and put some police officers and pay the fund to put more police officers on the street. If we can do it for somebody in Iraq and Afghanistan, why can't we do that here?
That was the initial thing 10 years ago here at the community center. We had neighborhood policing. We had an officer here at the community center. That gave a relationship between the officer and the kids on the street. Right now, that is not here because of economic crunches and setbacks. We don't have that. So now when these young people see the police officers, they see them when they're responding to something instead of responding to a need and a relationship.